Extraordinary and unprecedented. That's how sources inside FDA describe the fake public comments that spammed the network hosting the public consultation process for the proposed regulation of flavors in tobacco products. Last month, over 250,000 suspicious submissions swamped federal servers in just a little over 2 days, and RegWatch can report nearly all of these suspect submissions appear to be anti-flavors or anti-vaping in nature. It's a disruption campaign of the highest order, one that could bring down the consultation process and take vaping with it. The fight to save flavors is not going well for vaping as it continues to get thumped in the media and at the ballot box, where last month 70% of San Francisco voters backed a proposition to ban flavors in e-cigarettes. The Food and Drug Administration is doing its part to pressure vaping. In late March, FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb announced a new federal initiative to regulate flavors and launched a 90-day consultation process seeking public input to help inform regulatory action that could include restrictions or an all-out ban on flavors. The public consultation process is overseen by FDA's Division of Dockets Management, or DDM, which operates with regulations.gov, a U.S. federal government website tasked with providing the public a data input point for comments to be entered into the official record. And it's here where the startling impact of the fake 250,000 submissions can first be found. At the time of this recording, there are a massive 427,000 comments received into the system. And our sources at DDM tell RegWatch 60%, if not more, could be spam submissions which have been identified as anti-vaping. So what happened? According to the docket manager, sometime around close of business on Friday, June 8th, an unknown actor or actors launched a computer script or bot designed to individually enter en masse thousands of comments into the official record via a web form available to the public on regulations.gov. The bot reached full throttle, inputting 255,000 comments before technical staff could isolate the 4 offending IP addresses and cut off the flow, which they did the following Monday, June 11th. DDM staff tells RegWatch the spammed comments are currently under investigation by FDA's Center for Tobacco Products, and a decision on whether to accept or reject the submissions is pending. CTP investigators are reviewing the following facts. None of the 250,000 submissions include a first or last name, which is highly suspicious as most legitimate bulk comment campaigns strive to individualize each submission. Also, there are only 4 variants to the language, meaning tens of thousands of submissions are exact duplicates of each other. RegWatch has obtained the text for 3 versions of the duplicate submissions, and each use similar anti-vaping language drawn from what appears to be the same well. This April 18th letter to the Food and Drug Administration by Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids on behalf of the nation's top public health groups. Another abnormality is that the only identifying markers on the 4 variants of the suspicious submissions were 3 initials placed in the organization field, and while cryptic, they appear to implicate tobacco-free kids in spamming the regulator. The spamming event only lasted 1 weekend, but the damage was done. It nearly brought down government servers, and to this day, regulations.gov is completely bogged down, taking over 20 minutes for DDM staff to open a single record from the 255,000 spam comments. Most seriously, this could derail the entire public consultation process, as FDA is required to review each and every submission before officially publishing comments. In the weeks prior to the spamming event, FDA was approving and publishing between 1,500 to 3,500 comments per week. Then, beginning the first week after the attack, FDA published only 116 comments, then 720 comments, and for the week ending June 30th, 0 comments were published. Effectively, the public consultation process has ground to a halt. Joining us today by phone from Spotsylvania, Virginia, is Shane Corey, managing partner at MediaBridge LLC. Shane is a political strategist and digital media expert. He cut his teeth in Washington politics, serving as a director of Judicial Watch and executive director of both Project Veritas and the Libertarian National Committee. It's awesome. Shane, thanks for coming on the show. First off, tell our viewers about the work you do with MediaBridge.
Well, sure, Brent, and thanks for having me on. With MediaBridge, I've been in this political space for a little over 20 years now. And what I do is build up advocacy bases, donor bases for nonprofit organizations, and do all that work online. We've done 20 or 30 issue advocacy campaigns of size directed at the federal government and its various departments. So Media Bridge, on behalf of our clients, we're responsible for the most comments ever submitted to the IRS, the FCC, the EPA, the BLM, BOEM, and probably a handful of others. So it's kind of this online campaign process that we created that identifies potential supporters of an issue and making sure that, of course, we don't target the wrong side to drive up costs on the media campaign and get them to respond by posting a comment to the docket. And so that's generally the process, and as a result, we've learned quite a bit about the technical requirements as far as what it takes to get comments in the docket in large volume. But we've also learned quite a bit as far as the best way to do it to make the greatest impact. In the end, it's not about the quantity of the comments, it's about the quality of the comments, and being able to drive public policy in the direction that your client wants.
So Shane, before I ask you for your opinion about the disruption campaign that we've been talking about, I believe you were spearheading an effort several weeks back to get the vaping industry on board, to fund a campaign to fight back against it. What's the status of that?
At this point, our proposal is pretty much off the table because they're out of time. To be able to pull off a reasonable response or a reasonable campaign that, something that you'd have to pay for as far as educating the public and get them to comment, there's quite a bit involved in that. So if we were to go out and collect 1 million signatures at this point, or, comments for an organization, there's no way we would be able to submit those by the deadline, which is, in this case, July 19th.
Okay, so Shane, over the past 2 weeks, both you and I separately have spent a considerable amount of time on the phone with the folks in FDA's Division of Dockets Management. They say this disruption campaign is something they've never seen before. What do you think?
Well, I've never seen any campaign being done without at least a first and last name submitted. So what I found out, what you found out on your own as well, was about 250,000 of these letters came in without a first or last name. They had initials or an acronym in the organization field. I have regulations.gov and the flavor docket up on my screen right now. So there are 426,000 comments have been submitted. We can see 16,000 of those. 200 now, the FDA said 254,000 of those are a single form letter. Coming from those initials that you previously mentioned, with no names on it. So that means there's another 200,000 or so that have been submitted since then, and not even the FDA knows what's in those 200,000. Their system is so bogged down, it took them 20 minutes to pull up the single letter that I had requested. So we're going to have to wait until probably the comment period is closed, and maybe even weeks after that, to figure out what this campaign is all about, who the players are, who spent money, who didn't spend money, and, how activists had an impact in this.
Shane, you're so right. Regulations.gov is totally bogged down. When RegWatch first reached out on this issue, DDM staff couldn't even open a single letter during an hour-long phone call. So, it was crazy. But, when we finally got a chance to look at them, I was kind of blown away about the similarity. What did you think when you first saw one of the letters?
Whenever I'm able to see a letter, you have to figure out, all right, who's funding this? So I Googled companies like Juul are putting kids at risk of nicotine addiction and threaten to undermine. So those were the quotes I put in. That took me to a page by Tobacco Free Kids, but if you pull up it's health group's letter to the FDA. It's a PDF that was sent to the FDA at the onset of this campaign. That exact same language is in the letter that's being submitted to the FDA.
If that's the case, Shane, do you think that this is a real campaign on behalf of tobacco-free kids? I mean, I find it hard to believe TFK would do something like this. I mean, they're risking the wrath of the regulator and the public, and it's just so egregious.
If it is a real campaign, I would like to call up whoever paid for it and let them know they got ripped off. Because if it's real, it is one of the worst that I've seen. Whenever there's a comment campaign that's decently sized and one side cannot keep up with the other side's level of comments, it's far easier and less expensive, because these campaigns can cost many millions of dollars. It's easier to spend $100,000, $200,000 and load in fake comments or questionable comments into the opposition side and even your own side to discredit the entire process. So we saw that with the net neutrality fight in 2017, where 6 or 7 million comments went into the docket for the FCC, and it turned out that all sides had fake comments submitted. And that was designed to get the FCC to say, well, you know what, this entire comment process is a wash. We don't know what's real and what's not, so we're gonna throw the whole thing out and decide based upon other factors. And that's pretty much what they did.
Wow. So based on the net neutrality, what happened there in that fight, the motive here may be to discredit the entire process, which would allow the FDA to just, deem the entire process spoiled, and then they could actually toss out all the legitimate comments from vapors. I mean, could that really happen?
This is simply an effort to disrupt the campaign. If you add in a sense of a lack of credibility in the entire process, then they throw out everything. At the very least, if the FDA is not on the side or is not completely unbiased in this fight, which let's assume they're not, given they've introduced this, it gives them cover to go in and say, well, it's a draw. Vapors wrote in and wrote some compelling letters, and then, 250,000 other folks, unnamed, wrote in as well. So, it's weird in that, and it's unfortunate that a campaign that may not be legitimate whatsoever can influence public policy.
Well, that's it for this edition of RegWatch. Before you head off, please like us on Facebook and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. For RegulatorWatch.com, I'm Brent Stafford.